Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to MX Simulator, where today we're going to be playing the replica version of the 2019 High Point National in-game here. It's technically speaking the 2018 track, but MX Sim races the 2018 version for the 2019 races every year, so we just call it 2019 for fun. But I know that there are a couple things on this track that will be different this weekend. The MX Sports crew changing up the track just a little bit in the back section, kind of, anyway, I don't know. I'll tell you what is going to be a little bit different when I get to it, but the rest of the track for the most part seems like it's going to be pretty similar in and out of the valleys and stuff like that, using these kind of back and forth downhill sections to get from one side of the valley to the other, and then basically they kind of go back and forth across the valley a couple times after that. High Point's configuration has changed quite a bit in recent years. It used to be kind of almost like a pretty standard layout, except for they would change up Bradshaw Boulevard for 10 or so years, and now they've gone to like this completely new age, new wave alignment of the track where it switches back down the hills. This section's still pretty similar to what it used to be, but it's maybe a little bit peakier now. And then back here, like I said, is where they're going to be like a completely redesigned. I think it's still going to go up to the top of the hill right here, but it's going to kind of do what it used to do, which is turn left and go straight on that direction, come through the trees on the right-hand side here, and then re-enter the valley down here at the bottom. At least that's what I can tell from the picture so far. I'm not going to swear to it being exactly like that, but that's what it looks like from the photos. So expect to see a little bit of track change there this weekend. But yeah, High Point, good times. Probably the closest track to, or not probably, it is the closest track to MX Sports' headquarters. It's only like a 10-minute drive outside of Morgantown, West Virginia, where MX Sports and Racer X is headquartered. Just in the south side of Pennsylvania is High Point. And yeah, it's always been a pretty fun track to watch and spectate and all that business, and it's been maybe one of my more successful tracks to race in MX Simulator. I finished third in my very first try at a national on this track back in 2013. I went 6'3" for third, so got a little lucky there. But I've also had pretty decent finishes in the 450 class on this track. So I've always really enjoyed High Point. It's been a great track to me, and maybe one of the more enjoyable tracks that guys get to come to on the schedule, I feel like, because it's on the East Coast for the first time usually, so guys are maybe a little bit more back home, except for obviously like the California guys are used to it out here. But everybody seems to be trading in like Florida and on the East Coast now, so a little closer to home for them. And then yeah, East Coast dirt just absolutely destroys West Coast dirt. They always have a lot better like loamier sections and stuff like that, so this track usually ends up being pretty good. Very excited to see how it shapes up this weekend. So if you're new to these videos, maybe you haven't watched them before, basically what is going to happen for the next 10 or so minutes is going to be me talking about some real life motocross, like what's going to happen this weekend, what just happened a couple weeks ago at Colorado. Had a bit of a break in video action, but now we're going to recap Colorado a little bit and talk about what exactly went on there, some highlights from that one, and then preview coming into this weekend at High Point. So let's talk about that, shall we? I want to start off by talking about maybe like the hottest topic that came from the Thunder Valley National, and it was track cutting, which seems to be kind of a hit or miss talking point for a lot of people. Some people are obviously fully against what Adam Cianciarulo did in that second moto, and you know, he like made a big mistake, went off the track, and then re-entered pretty far after where he went off the track. Like he cut like a whole big part of an uphill section of the track. Re-entered the track basically right next to Justin Cooper. Like Cooper saw him, looked back, went over the jump, and was like, "What the heck? What's going on?" But Cianciarulo very crucially slowed down a lot, like on purpose. Like tried to make it very obvious. Like, look, I wasn't trying to gain an advantage. I just made a mistake, etc., etc., etc. And obviously the stewards or the race officials agreed in that sentiment because they did not dole out a penalty. Justin Cooper, well, more specifically Star Racing Yamaha, filed an official protest, and it came back with no penalty still. So you know, Cooper blew it by himself after that. I think he got a little bit riled up by Cianciarulo being like right there suddenly, even though he did open up that gap again once Cianciarulo let him go away a bit. But kind of freaked Cooper out, it seemed like, and made a couple big mistakes, and it crucially led into a huge off the bike moment where he like got kicked over the side and then, you know, side saddled it all the way off the side of the track and then laid it down. Could have been a lot worse, so kind of fortunate not to crash heavier there, but obviously was a little bit rattled. Got back up, almost caught Cianciarulo by the end of the race, but wasn't enough. And again, Justin Cooper can't seem to win one of these races, unfortunately. Cianciarulo goes 3 for 3 to start the year, has the red plate, obviously looks strong. But just to talk about that track cutting incident for just a moment, it seemed like the debate wasn't so much like Cianciarulo is a dirty cheater, yada, yada, yada. It was more of like we need almost like a better ruling on this than the one that currently exists, because what it really does on track for you is give you the ability to make a pretty big mistake, which Cianciarulo did, and not lose time. You know, at the end of it, he did give up like about a second by the time he got back on the track, and, you know, Cooper you know, went on by and Cianciarulo slowed down. So, you know, he did lose some time because he himself took the, you know, ethical decision to slow down. But you could argue that he would have lost more time if he, you know, tried to very correctly rejoin the racetrack similarly in a location to once he went off the track. Like, he could have slowed down and tried to hop back over the banners on the left side of the track instead of go across the inside of the track and hop over the banners on the other side. So I get kind of both sides of the argument here, and like I said, I think it divulged more into a rule book discussion of like, you know, it should maybe there be like openings in the banners every 20 feet for guys to come through so they don't get stuck on the inside of banners, or should there be like a legit, you know, standout penalty if they cut more than so many banners or whatever, something along those lines. Because the reality of the situation is like, yeah, Cianciarulo did make a mistake, and mistakes should be like penalized on track, like time-wise. Like, he made a big mistake, and Cooper should benefit from that, not lose time, which he didn't. But again, I'm just trying to, you know, kind of play both sides of the card here, and say that like I get both sides of the situation, and that I'm not blind to the fact that Cianciarulo did probably save himself a couple of seconds by rejoining and then slowing down instead of just trying to collect himself and rejoin where he almost or could have went off the track anyway. So I get both sides of the argument. I do think that there should be a little bit more cleaned up in the rule book about how it goes, and you know, none of this like open to discussion thing. And then I believe that they need to open up the sides of the tracks for you know, guys to be able to go in and out of. You know, the MXGP series, they used to have these like green barriers that line the outside of the track, and they finally got rid of those and maybe did something that's worse by putting a bunch of sideways banners. So if guys go off the track, they basically just plow through banners. But I mean, I get advertising dollars are spent and such like that, but like, let's just move the banners off the track even further, guys. Like, let's give them like a little 5-foot lane on either side, so if they do make a big mistake, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go inside of the banners to save themselves. Now, Cianciarulo probably would have done it either way because he had a pretty big off there. Like, it could have, he saved himself from crashing and thus ended up pretty sideways going across the track. But just in general, when guys get a little too close to the edge of the track, it seems like all too often they end up having to just dart off and avoid, you know, getting tangled up in some banners and stuff like that. So I'm all for them moving the banners away from the track and then opening up gaps in the banners enough so that guys have the ability to rejoin much closer to where they actually went off the racetrack, and we don't have one of these situations come up once again. But as it is motocross, history always repeats itself, and I'm sure something like this will happen again. My opinion of it is like, yeah, I think Cianciarulo did the right thing, slowed down, tried to give as much room. I think he probably should have given a little bit more room, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Heat of the moment, adrenaline going. So I think it's all fair at the end. You know, Justin Cooper and the Star guys are obviously going to be disappointed with the penalty didn't go their way, and I understand their reasoning, but I think in that situation, Cianciarulo did just enough to keep himself out of harm's way for a penalty, so I'm good with it. And obviously Cianciarulo and Cooper are pretty much established as like the guys right now because Dylan Ferrandis cannot buy a start. Whether or not that happens once they go east, I have my doubts, but hopefully he does because he clearly should be in the mix. He came from very far back to third in the second race at Lakewood, and I think that he has the speed to go with those guys, but he does not have the starts, and in the end of the season, I think that's really going to be what we'll look back and be like, well, Ferrandis could have been a contender, but he never got a start. So we'll see what happens this weekend. As for the 450 class, I brought up a question that I would like to pose to y'all. And I think that this, unfortunately, is going to divulge into well, I'm a Roczen fan, so I go this way, or I'm a Tomac fan, so I go this way discussion. But if you could think about it arbitrarily for just a second, just purely for bench racing's sake, the question I asked my dad, some of my friends and stuff like that was, do you think Kenny's consistently good starts is going to be enough to win a title? Because I don't think he's faster than Eli. I really don't. I think that over a 30-minute time span, Eli will be, better, faster most of the time. Clearly, it's been proven because he's won 4 of the 6 motos to start the year, and Kenny's only won 2, but he has 2 overalls in the red plate. But Eli has never really been that good at starting on dirt. The great kind of saved him in Supercross to now that he gets good starts on Supercross, but he only whole shot 1 race all year last year in the outdoors. So, Kenny's a great starter, kind of always has been. He's not always going to get good starts, but more often than not he will, and Tomac won't. And so far through 3 rounds to start the season, starts have been the biggest factor here because Tomac ends up not getting good starts. He ends up getting tangled up with crashes like Muscan going down when Barsha clipped him in the second corner of Lakewood. And then Tomac ends up way back, has goggle issues, has to come through the field. And by the time he got there, even if he didn't have those goggle issues, Kenny was long gone in the first moto. And even though his fitness issues aren't all there, he seems like he can control a race once he has a big enough lead. So that's why I'm saying, the question really resides here is, do his starts win him a title? Yes or no? Because clearly he isn't the fastest guy when it comes to a mano-a-mano discussion with Eli. But he's getting much better starts. So love to hear your guys' thoughts on that question below. What I do think is an interesting little bit of dynamic in that whole situation is what happens when Kenny gets good starts and Eli continues to make these weird, crashes or mistakes that ends up putting him outside of the top 10 on the first lap and he has to really charge through, is it's giving more opportunity where Eli is maybe riding a little bit over his head. Maybe not fully, maybe not as bad as he used to, but pushing the envelope more so than he probably wants to, where he can get in the lead and relax. And that obviously opens up the possibility to crash more often. So, that could come into play. I don't necessarily think it will. Eli's been pretty good the last couple of years of outdoors and not crashing and staying on 2 wheels the entire season. But, maybe it comes into play. And maybe Kenny getting these good starts not only positively affects his race results, but actually negatively affects Eli's because of those potential mistakes that happen when he's pushing the envelope to catch Kenny. Super interesting way that the series is shaping up because you really have, 2 of the best in the world that have 2 very, very different strengths, I would say, about them. And both of those strengths both of them and their strengths have been really shining through in these first couple of rounds. Now, kind of the biggest question mark is once the heat starts coming in, we get to WW Ranch, it's going to be 95 and 95% humidity. Does Kenny actually have the fitness to last? And we won't know till we're there. But going off the first 3 rounds, it does seem like starts are definitely a huge benefit for Kenny, and late race charges are a big benefit for Eli. We've seen guys who can start up front and win titles like that. We've seen guys who can charge to the field, a la Baggett, and win titles like that. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea which way my mind goes on who is the better of the 2 right now, because so far they've, Eli has more race wins, but Kenny has more overall wins and the points lead. So you would say maybe Kenny's strategy is working a little bit better, but obviously Eli is at some point going to get back into a bit of a groove and start clicking off actual race wins. And then Kenny will be the one doing kind of the charging and trying to put down the gauntlet, really. So just love that this is shaping up this way, because it would be a snoozer if one or the other was just running away with it all season long. I don't necessarily have a preference for either of them. I hope that they just continue to battle and make it really, really interesting all season long. But this is really fun for us fans to kind of break it down and see which of these strategies is better. And over an entire race season, who's going to stay up the most and who's going to get the, best starts and most points and best charges and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I'm actually looking for going into High Point is where do they start each moto? If Kenny starts both motos with a whole shot or inside the top 2, and Eli starts both motos outside of the top 10, I think Kenny wins the overall again this weekend. But if Eli starts inside of the top 10 both motos, I think Eli wins the overall. I mean, that's just kind of where they are at the moment, and I don't know if I quite see that dynamic changing just yet. Maybe the week off has kind of flipped the script for Kenny. He's a little bit like healthier and more ready to go. I don't know, but that's kind of how I see it at the moment. Obviously, guys like Anderson, Muscan, Osborne, Webb, they're all just a bit of a tick off. I think it's going to take, a little bit more, something more dramatic either happening to Kenny or Eli for those guys to get in and start winning. I want to believe Marvin is going to start doing it soon because I think he had the speed at Paula. He just waited too long to get around Kenny in the first race, and then Eli just kind of hawked him down and passed him in the second race. And Marvin was really good at High Point last year, so if history repeats itself, you could say Marvin might be a guy that could win this weekend, but is he going to feel as comfortable this weekend? Is he not? I really don't know. He seems to be a guy that, like, when he's on, and when he's off, it's like, oh, I hope he stays up front. Whereas some other guys can usually have off days and still finish in the top 5 or top 3. I don't necessarily peg Marvin as a guy that's exactly like that, but we'll see. And just generally excited to see how it goes. This weekend we're going to have Bloss back. I think Plessinger is not going to be back this weekend, but I think he may be back at WW Ranch. He's been riding, he's been training at Barsha's. If he's not back this weekend, he's going to be back very soon. And then Dean Wilson also released an update this week to basically say that this shoulder injury is taking a little bit longer than he expected. He won't be lining up this weekend, but should be soon. He's kind of waiting for more like, defined answers on how his shoulders are shaping up and what's going on there before he fully moves forward with like intensive training to get fully ready for outdoors. But I'd have to imagine it's not going to be long. Dean Wilson is kind of a bulldog type of guy, big fighter, and looking forward to seeing him back out soon as well. So that's kind of the storylines heading into High Point. I'm going to say Ferrandis, Tomac winners this weekend. I think something's different's going to happen in the 250 class going east. This track is very up and down, off camber, feels more GP-ish than most tracks on the West Coast. I think Ferrandis is going to have a good time this weekend. So I got Ferrandis and Tomac winning this weekend. Let me know what you guys think. Who's going to win this weekend? Who have you got? And what do you think about some of the questions and storylines that I covered in this video? Always love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. And appreciate you guys stopping by to watch another video here on Start Your Systems. A little bit of High Point gameplay. Be sure to download the track in the description below. Try it out for yourself. And hope you guys have a lovely day. As always, Kellen here on Start Your Systems, signing off. And I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.